Thomas Sawyer stood in the dim light of his attic, surrounded by dusty boxes and forgotten memories. At 62, he was still trim and active, but the weight of recent events hung heavy on his shoulders. It had been 6 months since his wife, Eleanor, had passed away, leaving a void in his life that seemed impossible to fill. He ran a hand through his graying hair, sighing as he looked at the mess around him. Eleanor had always been the organized one, keeping their lives in perfect order. Now, faced with the task of sorting through their shared possessions, Thomas felt overwhelmed. As he shifted a stack of old photo albums, a small, ornate wooden box caught his eye. He recognized it immediately. It was Eleanor's keepsake box, a treasure trove of memories she had collected over the years. With trembling hands, he opened it, half expecting to find it empty. Instead, nestled among ticket stubs and dried flowers, was an envelope with his name written in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. Thomas's heart raced as he carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. The paper was crisp, as if it had been written recently, but the date at the top told a different story. It was dated 15 years ago, on their 25th wedding anniversary. "My dearest Thomas," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I hope you found this letter at a time when you need it most." Thomas sank to the floor, his back against a stack of boxes, as he continued to read. Eleanor's words flowed over him, filled with love, memories, and a secret she had kept for decades. "There's something I need to tell you," Eleanor wrote, "something I've carried with me for years. Do you remember the summer of 1985, when we almost lost everything?" Thomas's mind raced back to that tumultuous time. Their small business had been on the brink of bankruptcy, and their marriage had been strained to the breaking point. It was the closest they had ever come to giving up on each other. "What you never knew," Eleanor's letter continued, "was that I had received an inheritance from my aunt that year. It was enough to save our business and our home. But I was angry with you then, Thomas. Angry at the risks you had taken, at the long hours you worked, at the distance that had grown between us. In a moment of weakness, I considered leaving you and starting over on my own." Thomas felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him. He had always believed they had weathered that storm together through sheer determination and luck. The idea that Eleanor had contemplated leaving him shook him to his core. "But then I looked at you," Eleanor wrote, "really looked at you. I saw the worry lines on your forehead, the sadness in your eyes, and I knew you were carrying the weight of our struggles on your shoulders. In that moment, I realized that my love for you was stronger than any hardship we faced. I decided to use the inheritance to save our life together without ever telling you about it." Tears blurred Thomas's vision as he read on. Eleanor explained how she had discreetly invested the money into their business, making it seem like a stroke of good fortune rather than a secret lifeline. She described the joy she felt as she watched their life rebuild, their love rekindled, all while carrying this secret. "I know you might be hurt that I kept this from you," she wrote, "but please understand my love. I didn't do it out of lack of trust, but out of a desire to protect your pride and to give us both a fresh start. The years that followed were the happiest of my life, and I never regretted my decision." Thomas's mind whirled with memories. He remembered the relief he had felt when their business suddenly turned around, the renewed passion in their marriage, the sense that they had overcome the impossible together. All this time, he had no idea of the silent sacrifice Eleanor had made. The letter went on, revealing other moments where Eleanor had quietly intervened in their lives. Small acts of love and protection that Thomas had never noticed, but which had shaped their life together in countless ways. "I'm telling you this now," Eleanor wrote, "because I want you to know the depth of my love for you. But more importantly, I want you to understand that it's okay to accept help, to lean on others, to be vulnerable. You've always been my rock, Thomas. But even rocks need support sometimes." As he neared the end of the letter, Thomas felt a mix of emotions washing over him. There was sadness for the years he wouldn't have with Eleanor, gratitude for the life they had shared, and a new understanding of the woman he had loved for so long. My final wish for you, Eleanor's letter concluded, is that you don't close yourself off from the world. Our love story has been beautiful, but it doesn't have to be the only one in your life. Be open to new experiences, to new connections. Live, Thomas. Live fully, love deeply, and know that I will always be with you in spirit. Thomas sat in silence for a long time after finishing the letter, tears streaming down his face. The attic around him seemed different now, not just a repository of old things, but a treasure trove of memories and untold stories. As the initial shock wore off, Thomas felt a change stirring within him. Eleanor's revelations, far from diminishing their life together, had deepened his appreciation for the complexity of love and the power of forgiveness. With newfound resolve, Thomas carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the keepsake box. He stood up, stretching his stiff muscles, and looked around the attic with fresh eyes. It was time to start sorting through these memories, not just to clear out the space, but to honor the life he and Eleanor had built together. Over the next few weeks, Thomas immersed himself in the task of organizing the attic. Each item he encountered now held new meaning, potential clues to other moments where Eleanor's silent love had shaped their life. He found himself laughing at old photographs, tearing up over handwritten notes, and marveling at the richness of the life they had shared. As he worked, Thomas also began to reach out to old friends and family members. Eleanor's words about not closing himself off echoed in his mind, pushing him to reconnect with people he had drifted away from in his grief. One Saturday morning, as Thomas was carefully wrapping some of Eleanor's old china, the doorbell rang. He opened the front door to find his neighbor, Sarah, standing there with a concerned look on her face. "Thomas," she said, "I hope you don't mind me dropping by. I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time in the attic, and I just wanted to make sure you're doing okay." Thomas smiled, touched by her concern. Sarah was a widow herself, having lost her husband 2 years ago. In the months since Eleanor's passing, she had been a quiet but constant presence, often leaving meals on his porch or tending to Eleanor's beloved garden. "I'm okay, Sarah," Thomas replied, surprising himself with how true those words felt. "Actually, I'm better than okay. Would you like to come in for some coffee? I have quite a story to tell you." Sarah's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded and followed Thomas into the house. As they sat in the kitchen, Thomas found himself sharing Eleanor's letter and the impact it had on him. Sarah listened attentively, her eyes shining with empathy and understanding. "Oh, Thomas," she said when he finished, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "What a beautiful gift Eleanor left for you. She sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was," Thomas agreed, feeling a warmth in his chest as he spoke about Eleanor. "And her letter. It's made me realize how much I've been hiding away since she died. I think it's time for me to start living again, just like she wanted." Sarah smiled, a hint of relief in her expression. "I'm so glad to hear that. You know, the community center is always looking for volunteers. It might be a good way to get back out there if you're interested." Thomas nodded, considering the idea. "That sounds perfect, actually. Maybe we could go together sometime? I'm sure I could use some guidance from an experienced volunteer." A faint blush colored Sarah's cheeks, but she nodded enthusiastically. "I'd like that, Thomas. Very much." As Sarah left that afternoon, Thomas felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in months. Eleanor's letter had not only given him peace about their past, but had also opened a door to his future. He knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but for the first time since Eleanor's passing, he felt ready to walk it. Over the next few months, Thomas threw himself into life with renewed vigor. He started volunteering at the community center, finding joy in helping others and forming new friendships. He traveled to visit his children and grandchildren, sharing stories about Eleanor and the secret strength she had given their family. His relationship with Sarah deepened as well. What started as a friendship born of shared loss gradually blossomed into something more. Thomas was surprised to find that his growing feelings for Sarah didn't diminish his love for Eleanor. Instead, It felt like his heart was expanding, making room for new love while treasuring the old. 1 year after finding Eleanor's letter, Thomas stood in the attic once again. The space was transformed now, organized and clean, a testament to the life he and Eleanor had shared. In his hands, he held the keepsake box, Eleanor's letter safely tucked inside. "Thank you, my love," he whispered, running his fingers over the box's smooth surface. "For everything." As he turned to leave the attic, Thomas caught sight of his reflection in an old mirror. The man looking back at him was different from the one who had first read Eleanor's letter a year ago. There was a spark in his eyes, a sense of purpose in his bearing. He was living just as Eleanor had wished. Thomas descended the stairs, the keepsake box in his arms. Sarah was waiting for him in the living room, a warm smile on her face. They were hosting a family dinner that evening, bringing together Thomas's children and grandchildren with Sarah's family. It was a celebration of life, of love both old and new. As he set the box down on the mantel, a place of honor in their home, Thomas felt a sense of completion. Eleanor's final gift had set him on this path, but the journey had been his own. He had learned to live again, to love again, all while keeping Eleanor's memory close to his heart. The sound of cars pulling up outside signaled the arrival of their guests. Thomas turned to Sarah, offering his hand. "Shall we?" he asked, his voice filled with warmth and anticipation. Sarah's fingers intertwined with his, a gesture both familiar and thrilling. "Let's," she replied, her eyes shining with affection. As they walked to the door together, Thomas sent a silent thank you to Eleanor. Her love continued to guide him, even now, leading him towards a future filled with hope, joy, and endless possibilities. The letter that had changed everything had, in the end, given him the greatest gift of all, the courage to embrace life in all its complexity and beauty. The evening unfolded in a whirlwind of laughter, stories, and the warm embrace of family. Thomas watched as his grandchildren played with Sarah's, their youthful energy filling the house with life. His children, initially hesitant about his relationship with Sarah, had come to appreciate the happiness she brought to their father's life. As the night wore on, Thomas found himself in a quiet moment, standing in the kitchen doorway, observing the scene before him. Sarah was deep in conversation with his daughter, their heads bent together in shared laughter. His son was attempting to teach Sarah's grandson a magic trick, their faces masks of concentration. The sight filled Thomas with a profound sense of gratitude. Eleanor's letter had not only given him permission to move forward, but it also paved the way for this new chapter in his life. He could almost feel her presence, a gentle warmth at his side, sharing in the joy of the moment. Later that night, after the guests had left and the house had settled into silence, Thomas and Sarah sat on the porch swing, enjoying the cool evening air. Sarah's head rested on Thomas's shoulder, their hands intertwined. "Thank you for today," Sarah murmured, her voice soft in the quiet night. "It means so much to see our families coming together like this." Thomas squeezed her hand gently. "I'm the one who should be thanking you," he replied, "for being patient with me, for understanding the place Eleanor will always have in my heart." Sarah lifted her head, meeting Thomas's gaze. "Eleanor will always be a part of you, Thomas, and that's as it should be. The love you shared, the life you built together, it's all part of who you are, and it's the man you are that I've fallen in love with." Thomas felt a lump form in his throat, overwhelmed by the depth of Sarah's understanding and love. He leaned in, kissing her softly, trying to convey all the emotions he couldn't put into words. As they parted, a comfortable silence fell between them. Thomas's mind drifted to the keepsake box sitting on the mantel inside, to the letter that had set this all in motion. "You know," he said after a while, "I've been thinking about Eleanor's letter, about the secret she kept all those years." Sarah nodded, encouraging him to continue. "At first, I was shocked that she had kept something so significant from me," Thomas admitted. "But the more I've reflected on it, the more I've come to appreciate the complexity of love. Eleanor's decision, born out of both anger and deep love, ultimately gave us the chance to rebuild our life together. It makes me realize that love isn't always about grand gestures or perfect honesty. Sometimes, it's about the quiet sacrifices we make for each other, the private battles we fight to protect our relationships. Sarah listened intently, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "That's beautiful, Thomas," she said softly. "And I think you're right. Love is messy and complicated, but that's what makes it real." Thomas nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. Eleanor's letter taught me that it's okay to be vulnerable, to accept help and love in whatever form it comes. And that's something I want to carry forward with you. He turned to face Sarah fully, taking both her hands in his. "I want you to know that I'm all in, Sarah. I may be older and a bit battered by life, but my heart is open. To you, to us, to whatever the future holds." Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she squeezed Thomas's hands. "Oh, Thomas," she whispered, "I'm all in too. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." As they sealed their promise with a kiss, Thomas felt a sense of rightness settle over him. Eleanor's love had shaped him, had given him the strength to open his heart again. And now, with Sarah, he was embarking on a new journey, one filled with the wisdom of past loves and the excitement of new beginnings. The porch swing creaked gently as they rocked, the night wrapping around them like a comfortable blanket. Thomas knew that life would continue to bring its challenges, its joys and sorrows, but he was no longer afraid to face them. With Eleanor's memory as a guiding light and Sarah's hand in his, he was ready for whatever lay ahead. As the stars twinkled overhead, Thomas sent a silent thank you to Eleanor wherever she might be. Her final gift had not just changed everything. It had given him the chance to live, love, and grow in ways he never thought possible. And for that, he would be eternally grateful.